The training grounds of the Valorian Fleet Academy stretched across a vast metallic platform that floated high above the planet's surface. The sun reflected off the smooth, polished floor, creating a glittering effect that made the entire arena look like a giant mirror. On this morning, the grounds were filled with hundreds of soldiers from different species, all gathered to begin their combat training for the new season. Teo walked through the main gate with his travel bag slung over one shoulder. He was a tall, muscular man with dark hair and calm eyes that seemed to take in everything around him without showing much emotion. His uniform was the standard gray color given to all new recruits, but something about him stood out. Perhaps it was the way he moved, with a quiet confidence that did not need to announce itself. Perhaps it was the weapon strapped carefully to his back. The weapon was a katana, not a modern plasma rifle or an energy sword like the other soldiers carried, not a shield generator or any of the advanced technology that filled the training grounds. It was a traditional Japanese blade, about as long as an arm, with a wooden handle wrapped in cloth and a curved metal sheath. The blade itself was hidden away, but even the sheath caught people's attention. A group of Valorian soldiers stood near the entrance, watching new recruits arrive. The Valorians were tall beings made of crystalline material that caught and reflected light. Their bodies were smooth and geometric, almost like walking diamonds. They had been the dominant military force in this sector for over 300 years, and they knew it. They moved with an arrogance that came from never having been defeated. One of the Valorians, a female named Haina, spotted Teo immediately. She was one of the training instructors, and she had the responsibility of assessing all new recruits. Her crystalline body gleamed in the sunlight as she approached Teo, her movements quick and precise. "Welcome to the Valorian Fleet Academy," she said, her voice like the sound of glass chiming softly. "I am Commander Haina. What is your name, and what species are you?" "My name is Tai-O, and I am human," he replied simply. He did not bow or show unnecessary respect. He simply stated these facts as if they were obvious. Haina looked him up and down. "Human. I have seen your species before. You are physically weaker than most soldiers we train here. Your bones are fragile. Your reactions are slower than the Valorians and many others. Why do you think you can serve in our military?" Teo did not seem bothered by her questions. "Because I have skills that cannot be measured by physical strength alone," he said calmly, "and because I will work harder than anyone else here to prove my value." "We shall see," Haina said. She noticed the katana on his back and gestured toward it. "What is that primitive weapon you are carrying? Do you know that we have plasma rifles that can destroy solid rock from 1,000 meters away? We have energy swords that can cut through steel like paper. Why would you bring something so ancient and useless?" Before Teo could answer, other soldiers began gathering around them. Word spread quickly that a new human recruit had arrived with a strange old weapon. More and more Valorians and other alien soldiers formed a circle around Teo, their curiosity turning to amusement. "Look at this," one of the Valorians said, pointing at the katana. "The human brought a toy to a real military academy." "Maybe he plans to show us ancient history," another one laughed. Their crystalline bodies produced a sound like wind chimes when they laughed, a beautiful sound that somehow felt mocking. Other soldiers joined in, though some of them seemed curious rather than mean. A tall insectoid creature with multiple arms asked, "What is the purpose of that blade? Can it fire energy bolts?" "No," Teo said. "It is a blade for close combat." "Close combat?" one of the Valorians exclaimed. "We have not used close combat tactics in over 200 years. Why would anyone choose to fight at such a disadvantage? You could be hit by an energy weapon from far away before you ever got close enough to use that stick." The laughter grew louder. More soldiers began to gather, drawn by the entertainment of mocking the human and his strange weapon. Teo stood in the center of the circle, completely calm. He did not smile or frown. He did not become angry or defensive. He simply stood there, watching and listening to their jokes. Hana observed this closely. Most recruits would have become angry or embarrassed by this treatment, but Teo seemed completely at peace. This interested her in a way she did not expect. A senior instructor named Jin Su approached the crowd. Jin Su was one of the most decorated Valorian warriors in the entire fleet. He had won every combat competition he had ever entered. His body was larger and more perfect than most Valorians, and he moved with the speed of lightning. "What is happening here?" Jin Su asked, his voice strong and commanding. The laughter stopped immediately, and the soldiers straightened up like they had been caught doing something wrong. "This human brought a weapon from ancient times," Hana explained, pointing at the katana. "It appears he does not understand modern warfare." Jin Su looked at Teo with interest. "Is this true? You chose to carry an ancient blade instead of modern weapons?" "Yes," Teo said. "This weapon is part of my training and my culture. I would like to use it in my service here." "You are welcome to carry it," Jin Su said. "But understand that you will be at a severe disadvantage in any real combat situation. Our weapons are faster, more powerful, and can strike from greater distances. Your blade requires you to get close to an enemy, and you will likely be dead before you reach them." "Perhaps," Teo said calmly, "but I would like the chance to prove myself." Jin Su studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Very well. We will see what a human with ancient weapons can accomplish. Report to the equipment room to receive your assignment. Your first training session begins this afternoon." As the crowd began to disperse, Hana found herself still watching Teo. Most new recruits would have been shaken by such treatment, but this human seemed completely unaffected. She could not decide if he was incredibly brave or simply foolish. Time would tell which it was. Teo turned and walked toward the equipment room, his katana secure on his back, his expression showing nothing of what he might be thinking. Around him, soldiers whispered and continued to laugh. The human had arrived at the academy, and he had instantly become the subject of their jokes and their doubt. He did not know it yet, but he was about to change everything about how they understood what strength truly meant. 3 weeks passed since Teo arrived at the Valorian Fleet Academy. During those weeks, he had settled into a routine that seemed strange to everyone who watched him. Every morning, before the official training began, he would wake up at dawn and practice alone in a corner of the training grounds. His movements were slow, deliberate, and focused. He would move through the same sequences again and again, his katana cutting through the air in smooth, controlled arcs. Other soldiers would sometimes stop to watch, but they did not understand what he was doing. To them, his practice looked useless. Real training involved speed, power, and the use of advanced weapons. This human's routine seemed like a waste of time. During the official training sessions, Teo performed well enough to not be dismissed outright. He was not the strongest, but he was not the weakest either. He could run, he could climb, he could follow orders. But when it came to weapon training, everyone expected him to fail. They expected him to finally understand how foolish he had been to bring a sword to a modern military academy. However, Teo had a secret. Every night after training ended, he would sit in his small room and study the other soldiers. He would think about their movements, their patterns, and how they fought. He wrote notes about their strengths and their weaknesses. He began to understand that the Valorians had developed a very specific way of fighting. They relied on speed, power, and technology. But they also had blind spots. They always moved in the same patterns because those patterns had worked for them for hundreds of years. No one had ever challenged them effectively. No one had taught them that there was more than one way to be strong. One afternoon, Jinsu made a formal announcement. There would be a major sparring competition in 1 month. All capable recruits would be required to participate. The winner would receive a special honor, and more importantly, would be selected for advanced training with the elite Valorian warriors. When the announcement was made, every soldier in the academy suddenly became more focused. This was not just training anymore. This was a chance to prove themselves. That evening, Teo submitted his name to the competition. When the instructors saw his name on the list, they looked at each other in confusion. The human was serious about this. He actually thought he could compete in a real sparring match against trained Valorian warriors and other advanced soldiers. The news spread through the academy quickly, and once again the soldiers began to laugh and make jokes. But something unexpected happened. Haina did not laugh. She had been watching Tayo carefully over the past 3 weeks. She had noticed how he moved, how he thought, how he approached every situation with careful intention. She had also noticed something else. Some of the younger recruits had started asking him questions about his training methods. Some of them had begun to mirror his movements, trying to understand what he was doing. This concerned her. She did not want any recruit to be distracted from proper Valorian training by what might be nothing more than cultural nostalgia. She called Teo to her office the day after he entered the competition. Her office was high in one of the academy towers, and from the windows you could see the entire training grounds below. "I have noticed that you are participating in the competition," Haina said, studying him carefully. "Yes, Commander," Teo replied. "You understand that you will be fighting against the strongest soldiers in this academy? You understand that you could be seriously injured?" "Yes, I understand," Teo said calmly. Haina leaned back in her chair. "Why do you do this? Why do you insist on using an ancient weapon when modern weapons are so much more effective? Why do you not simply accept that your species is not suited for advanced military combat?" Teo took a moment before answering. When he spoke, his words were careful and thoughtful. "Commander, in my culture, the blade is not just a weapon. It is a tool for understanding. It teaches patience, balance, and the ability to see what your opponent is about to do before they do it. Modern weapons make soldiers faster and more powerful, but they do not make soldiers wise. My goal is not to defeat everyone by being stronger. My goal is to prove that strength comes in many forms." Haina was quiet for a long moment. "You speak with conviction," she said finally, "but conviction alone will not protect you in a real fight. Still, I will not stop you from competing. I want to see if your words have any truth to them." Over the next month, Teo prepared for the competition. He continued his morning practice, his movements becoming more fluid, more precise. He studied the fighters who would be his opponents. He learned their habits, their favorite techniques, their predictable movements. Meanwhile, the other soldiers continued to prepare in the traditional way, getting faster, getting stronger, adding more power to their attacks. The day before the competition, Teo spent the entire afternoon and evening alone in the academy's meditation room. He sat in silence, his eyes closed, breathing slowly and deeply. His mind was calm, like still water. Around him, other recruits were nervous and excited, talking about their strategies, warming up their weapons, trying to build their confidence. But Teo was different. He was already exactly where he needed to be. That night, the arena was filled with excitement. The competition would begin at dawn. Soldiers from all over the galaxy had come to watch. Officers, commanders, and military officials filled the stands. The media had sent reporters. This was a major event, and everyone wanted to see which recruit would be crowned the strongest. Jinsu arrived to inspect the arena one final time. He walked past the practice areas where soldiers were preparing, and he noticed something. At the far end of the grounds, Teo was standing completely still, his eyes closed, his katana sheathed on his back. While everyone else was moving, talking, preparing, the human was simply standing there, doing nothing visible. But something about that stillness caught Jinsu's attention. He had seen many warriors in his long life, and he had learned to recognize the difference between simple relaxation and the calm that comes before great action. Teo possessed that second kind of calm. Jinsu approached him. "The competition begins tomorrow," he said. "Are you ready?" Teo opened his eyes and looked at the great Valorian warrior. "I have been ready for my entire life," he said simply. "Tomorrow I will simply show what I have always known to be true." The night passed slowly. In the stands, people discussed the coming matches. No one seriously believed that Teo would win. But a few people, a very few, were beginning to wonder if perhaps they had misjudged what the human could do. Tomorrow would answer all their questions. The sun rose slowly over the Valorian Fleet Academy training grounds, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The arena was already filling with people. Thousands of soldiers, officers, and observers took their seats in the massive circular stadium. The metallic floor of the arena gleamed in the early light. Above the stadium, massive screens displayed information about the matches that would take place today. The competition was divided into several rounds. First, soldiers would fight in pairs, the winners would advance. Eventually, only the strongest would remain, and the final match would determine the champion. Teo arrived at the arena an hour before the first matches. The grounds were already busy with soldiers warming up, checking their weapons, and practicing their techniques. He walked to a quiet corner and began his morning practice. His movements were the same as they always were: slow, controlled, precise. Around him, soldiers stared. Some laughed quietly. Others simply shook their heads. One young Valorian soldier approached him. "Why do you practice this way?" the soldier asked. "You should be preparing for your match. You should be getting your mind ready to fight. What does this slow movement accomplish?" Teo did not stop his practice as he answered. "Every moment is preparation. Every movement teaches the body to listen to the mind. Every breath brings focus. There is no separation between preparation and practice. They are the same thing." The young soldier did not understand, but he did not ask more questions. He simply walked away, still confused by the human's strange methods. As the morning progressed, the matches began. The first combat was between two Valorian warriors. They fought with incredible speed. Their energy swords crashed against each other so quickly that the sound became one continuous noise. The crowd cheered as the two warriors moved with perfect precision, each one countering the other's attacks instantly. The match lasted 5 minutes and ended when one warrior was thrown to the ground. Both of them were breathing hard, their crystalline bodies gleaming with what appeared to be sweat, though Valorians did not actually perspire like other species. More matches followed. A huge insectoid creature with 4 arms fought against a robot soldier. A tall, blue-skinned alien warrior fought against a female Valorian. The matches were all impressive in their own way, all showcasing incredible speed and power. The crowds cheered and applauded with each victory. Then the announcer called out a name. "Teo, human recruit, against Captain Moksung, Valorian warrior." Teo stood up from where he had been sitting quietly. He walked toward the arena, his movements calm and unhurried. Captain Moksung strode out from the opposite direction. Moksung was a large Valorian, bigger than most of his kind, with a gleaming plasma rifle in his hands. He looked almost amused by the fact that he would be fighting a human with an ancient blade. They stood at opposite ends of the arena. The announcer raised his hand, about to signal the start of the match. "Wait," Teo called out. "I request a change to the match rules." The entire stadium went silent. Heina leaned forward, her crystalline features showing surprise. Jinsu watched with sudden interest. "What change?" the announcer asked. "I request that we fight using close combat weapons only," Teo said. "The plasma rifle would be too great an advantage. It would not be a fair test of true skill." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Some soldiers nodded, understanding the logic. Others simply laughed at what they saw as human arrogance. Captain Mok Sung smiled. He set down his plasma rifle and drew an energy sword instead. An energy sword was more honorable anyway, more personal. "Now we are ready," Teo said. The announcer raised his hand again and brought it down sharply. "Begin!" Captain Mok Sung moved with incredible speed. His energy sword glowed with blue light as he rushed toward Teo. The human stood perfectly still until the very last moment. Then, with a movement so smooth it seemed like flowing water, Teo simply stepped to the side. Mok Sung's blade passed through the space where Teo had been standing just a moment before. The captain did not slow down. He turned and attacked again, his movements a blur of speed. Again, Teo moved. Not backward, but smoothly to one side, reading the attack before it came, predicting where Mok Sung would strike. The crowd watched in amazement as the human avoided every single attack without using any block or defensive move. He simply was not there when the blade arrived. On the 15th attack, Teo finally drew his katana. The blade reflected the sunlight as it left the sheath, producing a sound that was soft but clear. In one smooth motion, Teo used the blade to redirect Mok Sung's energy sword. The two weapons connected and sparks flew where the ancient blade met the modern weapon. "Finally," Mok Sung said, his voice showing the first sign of concern. "You can fight back." "I was always fighting," Teo replied simply. "I was simply reading you." The match continued, but now it was clear that something unexpected was happening. Mok Sung was faster, and his energy sword was more powerful, but Teo did something that no soldier had ever done against a Valorian warrior. He predicted their attacks. He knew where their blade would be before they moved it there. It was as if he could see into Mok Sung's mind and know what he intended to do. After 3 minutes of this strange battle, Teo found an opening. In one quick movement, he swept low with his katana, cutting at Mok Sung's leg. The energy sword could not defend against the attack because Mok Sung had already committed to an overhead strike. The blow landed, and Mok Sung fell to one knee. Teo stopped his blade inches from Mok Sung's face and stepped back. "You are defeated," he said calmly. The arena was completely silent. No one had expected this. No one had believed that a human with an ancient weapon could defeat a trained Valorian warrior. Captain Mok Sung sat there for a moment, breathing hard, then slowly got to his feet. He bowed to Teo. It was a gesture of deep respect, the kind of bow that one warrior gives to another warrior who has proven superior. The crowd did not cheer immediately. They were still trying to understand what they had just witnessed. Teo walked out of the arena, his katana still in his hand. As he passed Haina, their eyes met for just a moment. The commander's expression had changed. She was no longer amused or dismissive. She was curious. She wanted to know how he had done it. Teo's next match would be even more interesting. But first, all the other soldiers would have to wonder. How had the human done the impossible? How had he defeated a Valorian warrior? And what did it mean that the ancient blade had proven superior to modern weapons? The answers would come soon enough, but for now, the entire academy was asking the same question that had been brewing in their minds since Teo first arrived. Who was this human really, and what was he truly capable of doing? The victory over Captain Mok Sung spread through the academy like wildfire. Soldiers who had laughed at Teo just days before now spoke in hushed tones about the human warrior who had defeated a trained Valorian soldier. Some said it was luck. Some said Mok Sung had been careless. Some said there was something unusual about the match, something they did not fully understand. But everyone agreed on one thing. The human could fight better than anyone had expected. Teo advanced through the next rounds with steady success. His opponents grew stronger with each match, but his method remained the same. He stood calm. He read his opponent's movements, and he acted only when the time was perfect. He won against a four-armed insectoid warrior. He won against a robot soldier. He won against a larger alien species known for their incredible strength. With each victory, the crowd's reaction changed. The laughter had stopped. Now there was only silence and wonder. By the time the semifinal matches arrived, Teo had become the favorite to win the entire competition. The human who had been mocked so harshly at the beginning was now being discussed as a true warrior. Military officers and commanders who had come to watch the competition were now making notes about this human fighter. Some of them were wondering if the human military approach might offer something valuable to their own training methods. In the semi-final, Teo faced a female Valorian warrior named Su Jin. She was one of the most decorated soldiers in the academy. Unlike some of the others, Su Jin did not doubt Teo's abilities anymore. She had watched every one of his matches. She had studied his methods carefully. She knew that he did not rely on speed or strength, but on something far more subtle. She had decided to try to counter his strategy by being completely unpredictable. She would not follow any pattern. She would attack from unexpected angles. She would try to confuse him rather than overpower him. When the match began, Su Jin immediately showed a different fighting style than the other Valorians. She did not rush forward in a straight attack. Instead, she moved in curves, striking from angles that seemed impossible, changing direction without warning. For the first time since his victories began, Teo found himself struggling. He could not predict her movements because she had removed all patterns from her fighting. She had given her attacks no logic that he could read. The crowd watched in fascination. For the first time, a human was actually being challenged. Teo still avoided most of her strikes, but it was becoming harder. His movements were becoming more reactive and less graceful. Hana watched from her seat, her crystalline body perfectly still, her attention completely focused on the two fighters below. But then something happened that changed the match completely. Su Jin realized that although her unpredictable attacks were harder to read, they had another effect. Because she was moving unpredictably, she was also less stable. Her body was never fully balanced because she was constantly changing direction. A perfectly placed attack requires a perfectly balanced body. A completely unpredictable fighter will be more vulnerable because their balance will be compromised. Teo suddenly began to move differently. Instead of trying to predict Su Jin's next move, he began to move toward the spaces where her body would be weak. He moved toward the moments when her balance was shifting between one direction and another. On his next opportunity, he executed a move that was so precise and so fast that even some of the Valorians in the crowd had trouble seeing it. His katana touched the junction where Su Jin's arm connected to her body. The fight was over. Su Jin immediately stopped attacking and bowed to Teo, acknowledging his superior understanding of combat. "You read my unpredictability," she said with respect in her voice. "You found the weakness in any fighting style that has no logic. That is the mark of a true master." The crowd erupted. The human had advanced to the final match. Now there was only one more opponent between Teo and the championship. But this opponent was not an ordinary soldier. This opponent was Captain Jin Su. Jin Su was the greatest warrior that the Valorian fleet had to offer. He had never lost a match in his entire military career. He had defeated legends. He had trained some of the best fighters in the academy. When the announcement came that he would face Teo in the final match, even the soldiers who believed in the human's abilities felt some doubt. Jin Su was not like the others. He was on a different level entirely. The final match was scheduled for the next morning. The arena would be completely full. Every important person in the military would attend. The entire galaxy would be watching through broadcast channels. This was not just a competition match anymore. This was history about to be made. That night, Teo returned to his room. He did not look nervous or worried. He ate a simple meal, drank water, and prepared his katana. He cleaned the blade carefully, checking every part of it for any flaw. He sat in meditation, his breathing slow and steady, his mind perfectly calm. Outside his window, he could see the lights of the academy and the city beyond. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, he would face the greatest warrior he had ever encountered. Tomorrow, he would have the opportunity to prove everything that he believed about fighting, about strength, and about human capability. In his quarters, Jinsu was also preparing, but his preparation was different. He watched recordings of Teo's previous matches. He studied the human's techniques carefully. He tried to understand how a being who was smaller, weaker, and slower than a Valorian could defeat their warriors so completely. He recognized something in Teo's fighting that he had never seen before. It was not just technique. It was something deeper. It was a complete understanding of combat that went beyond the simple concepts of speed and power. Jinsu had trained for hundreds of years. He had fought countless opponents. He had mastered every fighting technique that the Valorians had developed. But watching Teo, he realized that there was something he had never learned. The human understood something about fighting that the Valorians, in all their technological advancement and physical superiority, had somehow missed. As the night progressed, Jinsu felt something he had not felt in a very long time. He felt uncertain. He felt like his certainty of victory was being questioned, and in a strange way, this made him feel more alive than he had felt in years. Tomorrow would not be just another match to win. Tomorrow would be a true test of everything he believed about himself and his abilities. The morning of the final match arrived with a strange electricity in the air. Every soldier in the academy felt it. Every observer watching through broadcast channels felt it. The entire galaxy seemed to be holding its breath. The arena filled with people hours before the match was scheduled to begin. High-ranking military officials took their places. Representatives from different planets and species arrived to witness what might be the most important match in military competition history. Haina stood in her command position, overlooking the arena. She had spent the entire night thinking about Teo and what he had accomplished. She still did not fully understand how he had done it, but she recognized that something fundamental had shifted. The way her people understood combat was about to be challenged in a way that could not be ignored. At dawn, the announcer's voice echoed across the stadium. The final match of the competition will now begin. Fighter 1, from the Valorian fleet, the undefeated champion, the legendary Captain Jinsu. The crowd erupted in applause. Huge screens showed Jinsu's past victories. Highlights of his greatest battles played for everyone to see. He was the hero that everyone had expected to win. Fighter 2, human recruit, Teo, who has defeated every opponent placed before him. The applause was different this time. There was surprise in it. There was confusion, but there was also respect. Even those who had mocked the human from the beginning had to acknowledge that he had earned his place in this final match. Jinsu walked into the arena first. His crystalline body seemed to shine even brighter than usual. He moved with perfect confidence, the confidence of someone who had won more times than anyone could count. He wore no armor beyond his standard military suit. He would not need armor. He had never needed armor. Teo entered from the opposite side. He moved slowly, his katana sheathed on his back, his expression peaceful. He wore the same gray uniform as all the other recruits. There was nothing special about how he looked, but there was something special about how he carried himself. Every movement was deliberate. Every step was exactly where it needed to be. They stood at opposite ends of the arena, separated by a distance of about 50 meters. For a long moment, neither of them moved. They simply looked at each other. Jinsu studied the human carefully. Teo stood with his eyes calm and clear. The crowd watched in complete silence. Even the wind seemed to stop blowing. The announcer raised his hand. "Let the final match begin." Jinsu moved. Not in a straight line, but in a perfect diagonal that would allow him to attack from multiple angles. His speed was incredible, faster than any human eye could normally follow. But Teo was not looking at Jinsu's speed. He was looking at something deeper. He was reading the shift in Jinsu's weight. He was watching the way the Valorian's body prepared for the attack. He was seeing, in the moment before Jinsu moved, exactly what the captain intended to do. In response to Jinsu's first attack, Teo did something that seemed impossible. He simply was not there. He had moved sideways, and Jinsu's perfectly calculated strike found only empty air. The crowd gasped. This was the first move, the first strike, and already it was clear that Teo could see what Jinsu was doing before the captain actually did it. Jinsu attacked again, and again, and again. His strikes were faster, more powerful, more complex than anything he had ever demonstrated before. He was holding nothing back. He was fighting at full capacity, using every technique, every strategy, every advantage that a Valorian warrior possessed. But nothing worked. Every attack found empty space. Every carefully planned strike passed through nothing but air. The crowd was so silent that you could hear the whisper of Jinsu's blade cutting through the wind. The only sounds were the captain's breathing growing harder and the soft footsteps of Teo moving gracefully around the arena. This was not what anyone had expected. This was something far more fundamental. After what seemed like an eternity, but was actually only moments, Jinsu paused. He was not tired. Valorians did not tire easily. But he had realized something important. His attacks were not connecting because Teo could see them coming. And if Teo could see them coming, then trying to hit the human with more force or more speed would never work. The advantage did not lie in speed or power. It lay in something else entirely. In that pause, Teo saw his opening. This was the moment. This was what he had trained for his entire life. In one smooth motion, the first true move of the match occurred. Teo drew his katana and moved forward. His blade moved in an arc that was so smooth and so perfect that it seemed like a single action of pure form. The blade came to rest against Jinsu's body, at the exact point where the Valorian's crystal structure was most vulnerable. "First move," Teo said quietly. Jinsu stood completely still. He understood immediately. He had been defeated. But he did not accept his defeat in the way someone normally would. Instead, he began to adjust his position. His eyes narrowed in concentration. He had learned something from that first move. He understood now what Teo was doing. He wanted to test this understanding. He wanted to see if it was consistent. Teo stepped back, allowing Jinsu to recover. The great Valorian captain rushed forward again, but this time his attack was different. It was not trying to be faster or more powerful. It was trying to be unpredictable, like Sujin's attack had been. But Teo had already learned how to read unpredictability. He had learned from every opponent that came before. The second move came when Jinsu overextended slightly. Teo read the moment when the captain's balance was committed to a direction he could not easily recover from. With precision that seemed almost impossible, Teo struck, not to injure, but to disarm. His blade caught Jinsu's weapon and knocked it from his crystalline hands. The energy sword flew through the air and landed far from the arena floor. "Second move," Teo said. Jinsu stood without his weapon, breathing heavily now, his eyes wide with understanding. He had fought the greatest warrior he had ever encountered. He had been defeated by someone who had somehow mastered a way of fighting that made all of his training and all of his speed and all of his strength irrelevant. The captain looked at Teo with something in his expression that had not been there before. It was not defeat. It was respect. It was the recognition of a superior warrior. Teo could have moved forward and made a third strike that would have ended the match completely. But he did not. Instead, he drew his blade back, holding it in a position of respect. The message was clear. The match was over. The human had won